Arteza very kindly offered to send me some of their Everblend alcohol markers, and as soon as I got that, I jumped on that because I've really been enjoying working with alcohol markers recently, and I've wanted to kind of try different brands and see how they work. And Arteza as a whole, I really like their art supplies for the most part, so I was just really interested to see how the Everblend markers fared to what I'm normally used to using. I personally have really only used Copics in the past. Those are just the only brand that I've really bought. I've tried a couple of different ones through subscription boxes, but my main experience with alcohol markers comes with Copics, so I was really interested to see how these ones fared. Arteza did send me a set of their 36 skin tones, as well as a set of 36 of the gray tone markers. I was really excited about both of these sets because they looked very interesting, and especially when it comes to gray tone markers. I think in total, I probably have like 6 gray tone markers, so if these were really nice quality, they'd be a very good addition to my current markers. And as you can see, as far as the marker's physical appearance goes, they come in a triangular body. They have the name and like the coding of the markers on either side, and they come with a chisel tip and a bullet nib. It's really nice because the actual body of the markers lets you know which side is which if you're not familiar with markers, it's really nice to have that physical indicator. They also have the little band of color around the bullet nib like a lot of other marker brands have, so that's a nice way to separate that as well. As far as the pricing of these markers go, in these sets in particular, the skin tone set on Arteza's website is currently $34.99 US, and that puts them about 97 cents per marker, which if you're familiar with alcohol markers, they can get very, very, very expensive, so 97 cents for a marker is a really good deal. For whatever reason, the gray tone set is a little bit cheaper on Arteza's website. It's actually $31.99, which puts the markers at about 89 cents each. So again, that one's an even better deal. However, just visually looking at the skin tone set, because it's a lot more brighter colors, the skin tone set was the one I was more excited for, even though I felt like the gray tone set was one that was more beneficial to my current marker set. I was just really excited to try the skin tones, especially since they were really pretty peaches and just like a very nice selection of colors. So the first set of swatches I did was in my render sketchbook. It was kind of interesting because I'm not super familiar with this paper, and like I mentioned in my last video in which I used this sketchbook, it has a weird drawing shift, so as far as doing drawings in this sketchbook, it was very strange, but we'll get to that. After swatching the markers though, I was really excited because I honestly did not notice any kind of quality difference between the markers I currently have and these markers. They were really juicy, they were absolutely gorgeous and vibrant colors, especially with the skin tone set. I was so excited to actually use these markers because they were very pretty, they were really easy to work with, and I was really excited to actually get drawing with these markers. And as you can see, Aslan, my cat, was a very big fan of these markers. As soon as I was done swatching them out and I was playing with them the very first day I got them, I think it was, he decided to come on my desk and lay on top of all of them. It was really, really cute. He's very silly and he definitely likes to lay down on whatever I'm working on, but I really appreciated his company. He was being super cute and I got some really good pictures of him, so I'm not gonna ever complain about that. As far as working with these markers goes, I didn't want to have like too high of expectations from the beginning. I really wanted to like them. I really wanted them to be good quality, so that was pretty much my expectations. I did have high expectations. I didn't want to, but I did have high expectations for these markers because I figured if they were nice quality, if it was something that I would be comfortable and happy including in my normal marker use, these would be really, really good additions and honestly really good starter sets for alcohol markers. I know it can be very intimidating as a beginner to a medium, especially with a medium that can get very not budget friendly, such as alcohol markers, in terms of like color selection, like what colors should you go for first, what's the best starter set of colors with something like alcohol markers where it's not like watercolors or acrylics where you can just get primaries and blend them. You do want to have a large selection of colors, and that can be very intimidating, but personally for me, when I started using alcohol markers, I was actually switching from using colored pencils to alcohol markers, and for me, the first things I wanted to pick up were skin tones because I felt like I really couldn't get a nice, good-looking skin tone with colored pencils in the sketchbooks that I was working on, and I wasn't super happy with the look of it. So for me, the very first alcohol markers that I ended up picking up were skin tones, and then from there I just kind of went with like brighter, more fun colors. But I feel like the skin tone set and the gray tone set are such good starting sets because you really do genuinely get such a nice color selection from both of these sets, especially the gray tone set. I know gray tones aren't very exciting colors necessarily because you can't do a whole lot of bright illustrations. There's a lot that you can do with like more colorful selection of colors than with gray tones, but there's such a nice addition to have. And honestly, with the Arteza gray tone set, it's such a wide range of grays. Like, there's 36 markers, they're all similar tones and shades, but even though they're similar tones and shades, I feel like there's no tones that are too close together that they seem repetitive in either of these sets, which is really, really nice. Like, these are both really good starting sets if you haven't built up a marker collection, or if you want to start with markers, or even like me. Like, I feel like both of these sets are really good additions to the markers that I already have, and I have like around 100 alcohol markers, so I was very excited about these markers. As far as the quality goes, I was also really, really genuinely impressed with these markers. Like I said, I don't have a lot to go off of because I don't have a ton of experience with alcohol markers outside of Copic markers, but I feel like the only thing that was even remotely holding me back from these markers at the beginning was the fact that there was no brush tip. I do really like playing with chisel tips, and I would play with chisel tips on my own, but not having the brush tip, it's not necessarily a bad thing by any means because it's just a learning curve. It's just very different going from working with a brush tip to a chisel tip and a bullet nib because it's a lot harder to blend if you're not used to it, but it really wasn't something that became a super inhibiting thing by any means. It was just a learning curve at the beginning, but once I kind of got the flow of how to blend with these and what these markers were capable of, I had so much fun working with these markers. These were the first art supply in a long time that I've just been excited to work with and excited to play with because like past like couple months, I really haven't been doing a ton of art. I really haven't been excited to make art, but I loved playing with these markers so much. I know it's very situational, but I had so much fun working with these markers. So obviously I do have really good opinions about these markers. I really enjoyed working with them. I'm really impressed by the quality. The shape of the markers didn't bother me at all in terms of holding. I was kind of worried about it at first because they were fairly thick, they were fairly large, and they were a different shape to what I was used to working with, but the shape didn't bother me at all. The markers were very juicy, very wonderful. I really like these markers. I could not recommend them enough. As far as pros and cons of these markers go, I've gone over a lot of the pros already. They're really juicy markers. I didn't have any of them that were dried out or putting out very little color. They were all like ready to go without being overflowing and dripping ink everywhere, but I really like these markers. They're really nice quality. Like I said before, I really didn't notice a difference between what I'm used to working with and these markers. The ink flowed out really well, it blended marvelously together with other colors. You're able to achieve a lot of different effects with these markers that you would with like more expensive markers, which I was so impressed with. And like I said, these sets have such a good color range. Honestly, the skin tone set in of itself I feel like is such a good starting set because while it is for the most part just skin tones, you get such a nice color range, and like the peaches and stuff, I feel like you're able to accomplish so much with just 36 markers, which 36 markers is a lot of markers, I will give it that, but it's just, there's so much you can do with these sets. They're so nice to work with. And another pro about these markers is that they do have replacement nibs, so this kind of leads into a con of the markers because Arteza does sell replacement nibs for the markers, so if something happens to it, if your dog eats it, whatever happens, they do sell replacement nibs, but they do not sell refills for these markers, which is completely understandable from like a cheaper, financially cheaper marker perspective. Is a lot of places, a lot of brands that sell cost-efficient markers don't have refills, and while they don't have refills, they actually do sell these markers in 4-packs for individual colors. So on Arteza's website, like if you run out of one particular color, you are able to buy that color individually, but they only sell those in packs of 4. So that's kind of it's not necessarily a pro in that sense because you do have to buy 4. And in doing that, it's a lot less cost efficient doing it that way as well, because on Arteza's website, for a set of 4 markers of the same color, it is $8.99, which puts them roughly $2.25 each. So that is a lot more expensive than the original, like less than $1 per marker, but if it's a color that you use a lot, if it's a color that you run out of quickly, that is an option that's available. And kind of moving over to the cons of these markers, honestly, there really aren't a lot of cons, and the ones I have written down are not influential to me at all. What I think a lot of people would consider to be the biggest cons of these markers is they do have a smell. They have a distinct smell to them. I can't really vouch for if it's a strong smell or if it's not a strong smell, because I know a lot of people, like, the smell of Copic markers really bother them. I've never had an issue with any alcohol marker smell bothering me. So while I can smell these markers and I know they have a distinct smell, I don't know if it's stronger or less strong than other brands of alcohol markers. They do have a smell. For me, that's not a con, obviously. I think it would just be based on personal preference. If you guys normally have problems with alcohol markers and you've tried these ones, if you could let me know in the comments below if it's a smell that bothers you or if these are less strong than other alcohol markers, because like I said, it's never bothered me before, so I don't know how to compare that on the scale, but I know that's something that really restricts people from going for certain brands of markers is the smell. So I know that's a very big indicator for some people as to whether or not they'd want these markers. Another con that I'd have to pick at is the caps don't necessarily match the actual color of the ink that comes out. This is pretty much a thing that happens with like every art supply, so even this one isn't an issue for me, especially when it comes to a set that, like, either of these sets, the colors are similar enough while still being like essential to the set that I don't feel comfortable just picking a color, especially since I'm not super familiar with all the colors. So I always have my little swatch card with me, that way I know what colors I'm reaching for versus going off of the caps, because the caps aren't 100% accurate to the actual color of the ink. That's a con, but it's not like an influential con for me, because that individually doesn't really impact me, because for most art supplies I do go off of the swatch sheet rather than what the tubes or the caps look like. That's not really an issue. Another con for me, it's really small too, but I noticed that some of the color names on the top of the caps, like on 2 markers, had started rubbing off. I don't know if it was in packaging, I don't know really what happened, but I think they're not on there the best that they could be, so over time that might start to fade, and that would be kind of an issue because the color names of the markers are not on the body of the marker, they're just on the caps, so that would be a problem if they came off. But for the price and just like the overall really good quality of these markers, I think the pros significantly outweigh the cons. I know my cons list was a little bit long, but that's because I was really nitpicking these markers and trying to find anything wrong with them. And in doing so, a lot of the things that I did put on the cons list were things that are by no means a deal breaker for me, so I obviously really liked working with these markers. If you're interested, Arteza has their own YouTube channel as well, where they showcase a lot of their own art supplies and products and just art as a whole on their channel. So I'll leave a link to that in the description below. I'll also have a 10% off code if you're interested in purchasing any of these markers or any other Arteza supplies. That guy will also be in the description box below for you. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.